Good morning. Welcome back from the last discussion we were doing on controllers, and in this session we'll be learning recording controllers, interleave controller, and most importantly if controller. There are another controllers apart from this, for example while or switch, which functions the same way as these loop statements work in your coding program language, right? So let's start with recording controllers. So we've been doing recording, scripts from the last chapters only. So just a basic function of recording controller I would like to display here. So for example, if I add a recording controller, that is right click, logic controller, and recording controller, you see that there is no configurations available here, which probably shows that it has to come from somewhere else. So where it has to come is workbench. When you right click and add a non-test element, test script recorder, that gets integrated with this recording controller, right? So if you see the target controller, you have recording controller, test plan, thread group. You can store recordings, whatever scripts you're recording from anywhere, browser or mobile proxy. You can either store in the recording controller, which is just as similar as a container to store your recordings, right? So you can use this recording controller to store your recordings here, and it will get all the scripts would get generated here. So this is the only use of recording controller, and you would find it, when you are recording your scripts. Also, one more thing you can see is that when you go to File, Templates, and select recording template and click on create. So let's create it. So now you can see that you have a thread group and a recording controller inside, whereas in Workbench you have this test script recorder. It shows that this is a template which by default takes recording controller as a target controller for storing your recordings, right? Okay, so let me close this. So let's move to the next topic, that is Interleave Controller. So for that, let me add a thread group and some request under it. So let's add a Interleave Controller, and then you can add a sampler, HTTP's request, and another sampler. So in real time, you can, put the real values here on whatever server and path you're hitting out at. So I'm just, showing you the flow of its working. So I'm not putting anything out here, just renaming the request so that I can show you that which request got executed and which were not. So I have two requests under my Interleave controllers, and let's say I have another controller. Maybe I can directly add a request here, or you can keep it under a simple controller, and then say you have a request 3 under it, right? Request 3. Okay, and then add a listener that would store your results in table. So before, for example, let's change it to simple controller, and let's see if no interleave controller is there, what are the results. So execute it. No, you have only one user and your request 1, 2 and 3 is executed. So all of them, right? So now you change it to interleave controller, which gives you two options: ignore subcontroller blocks or interleave across threads. So right now I'm not checking any of them. I have only one user, right, which has to execute once only, and let's see how it works. I will explain you what interleave means. So let's clear out the results and execute it. So now you see only request 1 and request 2 is executed, right? And request 1 and request 3 only got executed, and since I had only one user, so it didn't came back to execute the request 2. So if I talk about the flow here, so in the first iteration this request would get executed and then this request. So when the second time it comes, it would interleave this one and then request 2 will get executed followed by request 3. Only when you have enough number of users to loop back. Or for example, if I don't want to put the or increase the number of users, I can increase the number of loop count, say. Now it has to execute twice, and let's see how it works now. Execute. So you see request 1 and then request 3. 1 and then 3. Then it interleaves 2 and then comes back, 2 and then 3. So in the second time it interleaves the request which is executed last time because it is under the interleave controller and it executes request 3. So you all must be wondering where this is useful in real-time scenarios. I mean, you could come across many scenarios where you want to put load in such a way or in such a sequence that you want to test different scenarios. For example, say request 1 is say 100 users are hitting transaction button and then your 100 users are hitting login. For example, you want to see that when 100 users are doing transactions and at the same time followed by 100 users are logging into your application, how it would work. And after login, you want to see that when 100 users submit their transaction and then again 100 users log in, how does it works. So it could be any scenario in which you want to define your sequence like this. So you can use interleave in this case, right? So going by this same request, let's change this controller to a if controller. So now if controller has 2 requests under it, but I have not put any condition here. So let's see what happens. Without any condition in if, it executed only request number 3 because I don't have any condition for if controller to make it true so that it comes under this and execute the request 1 and 2. So you could put any condition. For example, say let's right click and preprocessor, take a user parameter, bring it to the top, add a variable, say value 1, then add another user for which the value is 2. So I have a variable value. For first user it has value 1 and for second user it has value 2. So if I put for first user it has value 1. So as we have already discussed how to define our variables, it is dollar then curly braces value. So for first it is 1. So if I put something like value is greater than 1, value is greater than 1. Okay. It is for user 1, value is greater than 1, which is false, and my expectation is that it should not get executed. Right? Now you must be wondering, when it executed first, the value is greater than 1 is false because for user 1 it is 1, but for user 2 it is 2. So when second time it got executed, it should have been passed because the value is 2, right? I mean the value is 2 here for user and this condition is also true. So just reiterating again, I have put value 2 for user 2, not for user 1 making the second iteration. If you go to the thread group, you see you have only one user and the same user 1 is reiterating twice. So go back to the thread group put the number of users as 2, loop count as 1, wash out the results and replay. So now you see request 3 and request 3. Still request 1 and 2 are not executed. Value is greater than 1. User parameter value user 2. Again, it has not got executed because if you see that name value user 1 user 2, but I have not updated after my iteration, right? I have to update my value every iteration, right? So clear this out, check this checkbox, which would update my value to 2 after my first iteration is done. Clear out the results, play it again and say no. So now you see first user value is 1 and this condition is false, right? This is false because 1 is not greater than 1. So this came out of this and only your request 3 got executed. But for user 2 this condition is true, so it came into the loop and executed request 1, 2 and 3. So it has the same purpose. You know, your if block is being used in programming language, same way you can use here using any variables or any value you can capture from preprocessor. You can also interpret this condition as a variable expression. You can put a variable expression here and checking this would evaluate condition the same way. So in the same way you have many controllers that are almost similar to the logics you used in your programming language. I'll just give a brief overview of what all we have. If we have already discussed, loop we have discussed. Once only controller is almost similar to the loop. Once only controller would make the request under it executes only once, even if you have a loop count of more than once. Random, it is not used. Recording we have discussed. Simple we have discussed. And switch is same as the switch statement we used in our language. While is almost the same. The while statement we use in our programming language with a condition. For example, if I add here, you can see you can put a condition here and this would get executed the same way it is executed in any programming language. Then what else you have? Transaction controller we have discussed. So we have almost discussed all the controllers that are being used in Jmeter. So that is all we were having in this controller section. So we'll discuss how we can define variables and functions in our next tutorial. Till then, thank you. Bye-bye.